Welcome to Space Mysteries, your trusted source for breaking headlines, global insights, and sharp analysis from around the world. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. A tariff is essentially a tax placed on goods that are brought into a country from abroad. When a product crosses a border, the government can impose this extra fee, which is then added to the cost of the item. Tariffs have been used for centuries by nations around the world, serving as a tool to regulate trade, generate revenue, and sometimes to protect local industries from foreign competition. In today's globalized economy, tariffs can have far-reaching effects, influencing not just the price of goods, but also the relationships between countries and the health of entire industries. The main idea behind a tariff is to make imported products more expensive compared to those made domestically. By raising the price of foreign goods, tariffs are intended to encourage consumers to choose American-made products instead. This, in theory, helps support local businesses and keeps money circulating within the country. For shoppers, this can mean seeing a noticeable difference in price between imported and domestic items on store shelves. During his presidency, Donald Trump made tariffs a cornerstone of his America First economic strategy. He argued that the United States had been taken advantage of in global trade deals, especially by countries like China. Trump imposed new tariffs on a wide range of products, including steel, aluminum, electronics, and even everyday items. These measures were not limited to rivals. Even close U.S. allies found themselves facing new taxes on their exports to America. Trump's approach was bold and controversial, sparking intense debate both at home and abroad. Supporters of Trump's tariff policies believed these actions would protect American jobs, especially in industries like steel and manufacturing that had been struggling for years. They argued that by making foreign goods more expensive, American companies would have a better chance to compete, grow, and hire more workers. Some even saw tariffs as a way to force other countries to negotiate fairer trade deals with the United States. On the other hand, critics warned that tariffs would have unintended consequences. They pointed out that higher prices on imported goods could hurt American consumers and businesses alike, especially those that rely on parts or materials from overseas. Small businesses in particular faced rising costs that could be difficult to absorb. Some economists predicted that tariffs could lead to job losses, higher prices, and even spark trade wars with other countries. The debate over tariffs quickly escalated into a broader clash about the future of American manufacturing and the risks of disrupting global supply chains. Some argued that tariffs could help revive industries that had been hollowed out by decades of outsourcing. Others feared that breaking up established trade relationships would backfire, causing delays, shortages, and economic pain for workers and consumers alike. This fundamental disagreement over the role and impact of tariffs set the stage for years of heated economic and political debate. Lawmakers, business leaders, and everyday Americans found themselves divided over whether tariffs were a necessary tool for national strength or a risky gamble that could harm the economy. Now, the controversy over tariffs has reached the highest court in the land, the U.S. Supreme Court. The justices are being asked to weigh in on the legality and limits of presidential power when it comes to imposing tariffs, a decision that could have lasting consequences for American trade policy and the global economy. The Supreme Court must now decide if the president had the legal authority to impose sweeping tariffs without Congress. The case centers on whether emergency powers meant for national security were stretched too far. A ruling for the president could give future leaders broad power to use tariffs as a primary tool of economic policy. A ruling against could force presidents to work with Congress on major trade actions. Billions in tariff revenue and the balance of power between branches of government hang in the balance. The decision will impact businesses, consumers, and America's role in global trade. The stakes couldn't be higher. Former President Donald Trump has issued stark warnings about the potential consequences of overturning his signature tariffs, arguing that such a move would have catastrophic effects on the U.S. economy. Trump has repeatedly emphasized that eliminating these tariffs could trigger a severe economic downturn, one so profound that he has drawn comparisons to the Great Depression of the 1930s, a period marked by mass unemployment, widespread poverty, and a collapse of American industry. By invoking the specter of the Great Depression, Trump aims to highlight the gravity of the situation, warning that millions of American jobs could be at risk if the tariffs are struck down. He paints a vivid picture of economic hardship, suggesting that the country could once again see breadlines and shuttered factories if protective measures are removed. According to Trump, tariffs are not just a policy tool. They are a shield that defends American industries from what he describes as unfair foreign competition, particularly from countries like China. He argues that without these tariffs, American manufacturers would be unable to compete, leading to factory closures and the loss of good-paying jobs across the nation. Trump frequently points to the period of his presidency as evidence, crediting his tariff policies for a surge in job creation, a booming stock market, and renewed confidence in American manufacturing. He claims that these economic gains were directly tied to his tough stance on trade and his willingness to confront global competitors. In his public statements, Trump frames the ongoing legal challenge to his tariffs as not just a policy dispute, but a direct threat to the nation's prosperity and security. He argues that weakening presidential authority in this area could leave the country vulnerable to economic manipulation by foreign powers. Supporters of Trump echo his dire warnings, insisting that removing tariffs would open the floodgates to cheap imports, undercutting American businesses and leading to mass layoffs in key industries. They argue that the stakes are nothing less than the future of the American workforce and the survival of entire communities dependent on manufacturing. Critics, however, dismiss these warnings as political theater, accusing Trump and his allies of exaggerating the risks for political gain. Still, the heated rhetoric has dramatically raised the stakes as the Supreme Court prepares to weigh in on the issue, drawing national attention to the case. Ultimately, the Supreme Court's decision will not only determine the fate of Trump's tariffs, but also test the limits of presidential power during times of economic crisis, setting a precedent that could shape American trade policy for years to come. When it comes to the topic of tariffs and trade policy, economists often find themselves at the center of heated debates. Many economists argue that removing tariffs would actually boost the U.S. economy, not crash it. This perspective is rooted in decades of research and real-world examples, where reducing trade barriers has led to increased economic activity and prosperity. They believe that open markets allow businesses to access cheaper materials and consumers to enjoy a wider variety of goods at lower prices. According to these experts, tariffs act as a hidden tax, raising costs for both businesses and consumers while slowing overall economic growth. When companies have to pay more for imported goods or materials, those extra costs are often passed down the supply chain, eventually reaching everyday shoppers in the form of higher prices. This can make it harder for families to afford basic necessities and for businesses to stay competitive in a global market. Furthermore, experts point out that the revenue generated from tariffs is actually a tiny fraction of the federal budget. While tariffs may seem like a way to bring in money for the government, in reality, they contribute very little compared to other sources of revenue, like income or payroll taxes. This means that the economic pain caused by tariffs often outweighs any financial benefit to the government. Another major concern is the impact of retaliatory tariffs from other countries. When the U.S. imposes tariffs, trading partners often respond in kind, targeting American goods such as agricultural products, machinery, and manufactured items. This has hurt American farmers and exporters, who find it harder to sell their products abroad, leading to lost income and, in some cases, job losses in rural communities. Most economists believe that open trade leads to lower prices, more jobs, and greater innovation. By encouraging competition and allowing businesses to specialize in what they do best, trade can drive economic growth and create new opportunities for workers and entrepreneurs alike. It also gives consumers access to a broader range of products, often at better prices. Many see the upcoming Supreme Court case as a pivotal moment, a chance to remove what they view as a major drag on economic growth. If the court rules in favor of reducing or eliminating tariffs, it could set a precedent that shapes trade policy for years to come, potentially unlocking new growth and investment across the country. For these economists, the real risk lies in keeping tariffs in place, not in removing them. They warn that maintaining high trade barriers could stifle innovation, limit job creation, and make the U.S. less competitive on the world stage. In their view, clinging to tariffs is a recipe for economic stagnation rather than progress. The economic evidence, they argue, is clear. Tariffs tend to hurt more than they help. By raising costs, reducing exports, and inviting retaliation, tariffs can drag down the entire economy. That's why, despite political disagreements, a strong majority of economists continue to advocate for open trade and the reduction of barriers wherever possible. Wall Street's view on tariffs often clashes with Trump's claims. Financial analysts say tariffs have fueled market anxiety and volatility, not growth. Companies facing higher import costs see profits squeezed, especially in manufacturing and tech. Stock markets have tended to rally on news of tariff reductions, not new tariffs. Most investors see tariffs as a risk, not a catalyst for growth. The ongoing legal uncertainty makes it hard for businesses to plan and invest. A Supreme Court decision could finally bring clarity. Many believe striking down the tariffs would spark a new wave of investment and optimism. The legal fight began in the U.S. Court of International Trade, which ruled the Trump administration overstepped its authority. The court found the administration misused emergency powers and failed to follow proper procedures. The government appealed, pushing the case up the judicial ladder. At issue is whether the president can use national security as a broad justification for tariffs, even against allies. Critics say this stretches the law too far. The administration argues economic strength is national security. Now, the Supreme Court must decide how much power the president really has over trade. The outcome will set a precedent for decades. The tariff debate is really about two competing philosophies: protectionism and free trade. Protectionists want to shield U.S. industries and jobs from foreign competition, even if it means higher prices. They argue tariffs are needed to level the playing field and ensure economic security. Free trade advocates believe open markets drive innovation, lower costs, and create new jobs. They see tariffs as barriers that hurt everyone by disrupting global supply chains. Both sides agree the stakes are high, but they disagree on the best path to prosperity. The Supreme Court's decision will shape which philosophy guides U.S. policy. This is about more than tariffs. It's about America's economic identity. Defenders of tariffs highlight the billions in revenue they bring to the U.S. Treasury. They argue this money helps fund government services and reduces the need for other taxes. Critics counter that tariff revenue is tiny compared to the federal budget and comes at a high economic cost. They say tariffs slow growth, raise prices, and hurt investment, outweighing any fiscal benefit. Economists argue a stronger, tariff-free economy would generate more tax revenue in the long run. The Supreme Court must weigh whether this revenue justifies the broader economic harm. The answer could reshape how America funds its government. The Supreme Court's decision will redefine the balance of power over trade policy for generations. Upholding broad presidential authority could make tariffs a go-to tool for future presidents, increasing unpredictability in global trade. Limiting that power would restore Congress's traditional role and bring more stability to trade policy. The ruling will influence how America interacts with the world and how power is shared at home. Business leaders, lawmakers, and foreign governments are watching closely. The outcome will shape the rules of global commerce and America's economic future. This is more than a legal battle. It's a turning point for the nation's identity on the world stage.